On the docket for today's Philadelphia 76ers. Now, did Daryl Morey reveal that OG Anunoby is the perfect trade candidate for Philadelphia because of his two-way ability? We're going to dive into that as well as some other Sixers trade targets as the Sixers 5-1 to start the year. And speaking of that, hottest team in basketball right now and one of the best teams in basketball. Make sure you subscribe to the channel for year-round Sixers coverage. We're closing in on 13,000 subscribers. And how many subs can we pick up before our watch party tomorrow on Wednesday? What a matchup we have. Boston Celtics 5-1, Sixers 5-1, one of the most storied rivalries in all of sports. Make sure you join myself, producer Chip, for the best place to experience the game outside of being at the game. Subscribe, turn on your notifications. Therefore, when we go live for our pregame show and when we're live during the game, you'll be able to hang out with us. So this is the quote from Daryl Morey that we want to focus in on today's show. And did he hint that OG Anunoby, without tampering, because we know Daryl Morey has been prone to tampering, did he reveal kind of that OG Anunoby is his guy? Look, we won't get our dream guy almost for sure. We'll probably have to get something and make it work. But I would say first off, they need to be pretty solid on both ends of the floor. As you get into the playoffs, it gets very hard for your top guys to be elite only one way. Is that a shot at James Harden? Maybe he's finally realizing that Harden is not a two-way player and he costs you championship-level success. More from Morey, it has worked, but it's very rare. The other thing would be we probably need them to have a bit of a playmaking sort of connector ball movement aspect to their game. We are a little bit short on that, and it becomes way more important in the playoffs as well. With what Daryl Morey said, and with the players who have been linked to the Philadelphia 76ers and the connection that Nick Nurse has to OG Anunoby, this really does perfectly describe Anunoby's game. He can play off ball, is low maintenance. He has a two-way ability to impact the game offensively and defensively. His offensive arsenal has gotten better and better every year that he's been in the league. And when it comes time for the playoffs, he can defend some of the best wings in the NBA at a really, really high level. The perfect fit, is he? We'll let you decide, but Anunoby, one of 8 players to shoot 40% from 3 and average 1 steal and a half block per game. He's 9th in defensive rating, 1st among players with at least 30 minutes per game. As you take a look at some of the analytics there, and on Sunday against the San Antonio Spurs, Anunoby, who had previously gotten off to a little bit of a slow start as compared to previous years, a career high 7 3-pointers made on Sunday against the Spurs. I also like some of the other advanced stats on OG Anunoby, but also his fit on this Sixers roster. You put D'Anthony Melton on the bench. Maybe then you have Kelly Oubre Jr. as a reserve on this team as well. And your starters can feature Tyrese Maxey, Tobias Harris, OG Anunoby, whoever you kind of want to start at that 4 spot, Joel Embiid. If you want to continue to play Kelly Oubre Jr. in that starting 5, you can do that as well. But I like the length, the athleticism, the fit, and then the offensive and defensive impact that a player like OG Anunoby can have. You talk about some of the analytics and some of the in-depth numbers here. NBA superstars, when guarded by OG Anunoby, he's been able to stick with Victor Wembanyama, the freakish alien, holding him to a 36% field goal rate. Anthony Edwards shooting 10% on his field goals. DeMar DeRozan at 14. Joel Embiid, none, obviously on a smaller sample size. Rudy Gobert, 33% from the field. He's also 1st in the NBA in defensive wins shared. This is a pretty impressive list here to my right because this is a wide-ranging list of players here, from bigs to wings to playmakers and some difficult players to guard. Extra stat news with this: lowest opposing field goal percentage this season, minimum of 25 field goal attempts. Victor Wembanyama at 20%, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope at 22.2%, OG Anunoby, 22.9. So here it goes to show you one of the best defenders in the league on top of all of the numbers that we've been breaking down. These are the only players right now holding opponents under 25% from the deck. Nick Nurse is a defensive savant. This year, he's proven to be a bright offensive mind as well, which I told you he has to his coaching bag, and he has that familiarity with OG Anunoby. And then when you think about the fit offensively, because already we've been talking about what Anunoby can do as a lockdown defender in this league, most corner three-pointers this season, OG Anunoby tied for second there after Grant Williams, who's figured to be a really good fit, alongside Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving with 10. He's shooting nearly 59% on those three-point attempts. Dorian Finney-Smith of the Brooklyn Nets, he has 9. And then OG Anunoby, 47.4% from corner threes. He's sunk 9 of them so far. And there you go. That's the offensive fit and the defensive fit. And then there's this plus-minus on and off the floor. LeBron James, he's number 1 in the NBA. On plus-minus of 47, off minus 70. Look at who is number 2 here. It's the OG, original gangsta, OG Anunoby, 63 on the plus-minus, and then when he's off the floor, minus 58. So that's the type of impact that Anunoby can have, and that's really everything that Daryl Morey discussed with that quote that we mentioned off the rip. His contract situation has a $19.9 million player option this offseason, which he will most likely decline so that he can cash in and make some more money on his next deal. And for Anunoby, injuries have been a little bit of a concern. Durability raises some question marks, but when healthy, all of the numbers that we dissected really goes to show you the type of caliber of player that he is. So what say you? Could the Sixers win a championship if OG Anunoby is the piece that they bring in? Because I'm not sure they need another superstar on this roster, because I don't want shots taken away from Tyrese Maxey and Joel Embiid, who, by the way, off to the best start of his NBA career. Y for yes or N for no. Coming up next here on the show, an OG Anunoby trade idea that we want to get to, but first, let's get to this. Prize Picks, the number 1 independently run and largest daily fantasy sports app in North America. And if you use our link, prizepicks.com/CLNS, you can get a $100 deposit match. It's daily fantasy sports made easy. You pick 2+ players. You choose more or less on their projected stat lines. And you can either have a higher payout if you choose all 3 more or lesses and they end up reaping benefits for you, or you could go 2 of 3. Yesterday, check out my picks from Monday. I had Tyrese Maxey more than 22.5. He had 22 on the dot. They always know. I thought DeAnthony Melton was going to have a breakout game because he's a better player than how he started the year. More than 8.5. He had his best game of the season. And then I went Paul George and Justin Herbert. More than 4.5 three-pointers made, as well as passing touchdowns. I was very close to getting 2 of the 3. It makes game days and game nights a lot more fun and a lot more entertaining. So sign up today, prizepicks.com/CLNS. We'll put all of that information with the link, the promo code, down below in the comment section and in the description of this video. So a trade idea here for OG Anunoby. The Sixers get OG as well as Otto Porter Jr., some salary filler there. And then the Raptors get Jaden Springer, Marcus Morris, Furkan Korkmaz, who's back in the rotation, by the way, had a really nice dish to Joel Embiid as the Sixers beat the zone against the Wizards as Embiid, 48 points, a franchise record 29 in the third quarter. Korkmaz, he's been impressing Nurse, and that's why he's a part of this rotation. And Marcus Morris, kind of a salary filler. Jaden Springer, young two-way player. Korkmaz is your shooter. And then you give up those first-round picks, 28 and 29, from the Los Angeles Clippers. That's why it's important. Like, you have the players now. young asset like Springer, shooter in Cork Moss who's getting more run, salary filler with Marcus Morris, but the draft capital to be able to make a trade like this with OG Anunoby and Otto Porter Jr., who I'm not sure if he'd get bought out, because how about what Nicholas Batum was able to do in his Sixers debut on Monday night? Why this makes sense for Toronto, most likely entering a rebuild here. Siakam, Gary Trent Jr., they're going to be free agents, going to need to pay Scotty Barnes after next year, and why it makes sense for Philadelphia here. Sixers are ready to go all in. They don't need like a bona fide superstar, but a player who fits well on that roster. They can risk and take the risk of not being able to bring Anunoby back to push for a title this year. Also, leaves flexibility that Morey wanted this offseason. After that James Harden trade, Philadelphia projected to have between $52 and $65 million in 2024 NBA free agency. So would you make this trade? Let us know down in the comment section. Treat it like a sports talk radio call-in line, T for trade or P for pass. And then you look at the Sixers roster with OG Anunoby. And I was talking a little bit earlier about what you could do with the starting five. You could take DeAnthony Melton out of that starting rotation. You could take Kelly Oubre out. A couple of different iterations here. Here you have good size, you have good athleticism with Maxey, Melton, Harris, Embiid, as well as OG Anunoby. Other trade options here for Philadelphia. I like what Patrick Beverley has brought to this team stylistically as well as defensively. But if you want to bring in another defensive-heavy guard, if you want to pass on the high price tag potentially of Marcus Smart, you could settle for Alex Caruso, who can also knock down that corner three. I've seen a lot of Sixers fans in the chat here on 76ers Now talking about Malcolm Brogdon. Injuries certainly concern me, but a very good two-way player and one of the better two-way players on this list here. Tyus Jones can certainly make some things happen. The Washington Wizards are awful, but when Tyus Jones gets a lot of run, he's actually a really productive player. And then Dorian Finney-Smith, that lockdown defender, wing/4 who can hit the three. When he was playing with Luka Doncic, he was one of their most valuable players when they made it to the Western Conference Finals a couple of years ago. Now he's playing with the Brooklyn Nets. If you're still rocking with us, Real One roll call. I want you to spam Real One down in the chat, because the real ones are the ones who subscribe, like the video, send in super chats, watch, and then of course hang out with us for the entire duration of the program. We're going to be back Wednesday night, Sixers, Celtics, watch party, F Boston.